So yeah, recap of Red Hat Summit. So we'll dive right in, right? So RHEL 10 and 9.6 are now GA. As far as RHEL 10 goes, the big things within RHEL 10, image mode is now GA. So if you've been following that, image mode is a new way of deploying packages on RHEL, right? We've got package mode is what we're calling using RPM to install packages on RHEL. Image mode is kind of the new way. And then I've got slides on all of these. Post-quantum cryptography, RHEL Lightspeed was announced. And then we've got various new features, obviously the latest versions of different packages, that sort of stuff. So, RHEL 10, right? The whole goal is one of the big things and one of the focuses in RHEL 10 is working on addressing the skills gap, making it easier for people to admin and troubleshoot and that sort of stuff on RHEL. So that ties into some of the later ones, contain drift, making better decisions at build time. So this goes back to helping with deployment, management, and just making it easier to maintain and especially maintain at scale. Then obviously security features with resisting attackers. So that kind of ties into the quantum. And leveraging RHEL as a platform for building out AI things, right? Everybody seems like everything everywhere is all AI these days, but a lot of that it's AI in the cloud and you're giving all your data away, right? You don't know what is happening with it potentially, that sort of stuff. Red Hat is trying really hard to give people the tools to democratize, being able to use some of these AI tools, but have them under your control. So as far as addressing the Linux skills gap, right? RHEL Lightspeed is something that we announced at Summit. And so what this is there's various features, and you'll see Lightspeed is a general Red Hat branding, right? So when we're infusing AI type features into some of our existing products, that's where you'll see Lightspeed. So we've had Ansible Lightspeed for a while. There's been enhancements to that. This is RHEL Lightspeed is now out there and available in RHEL 10 and in 9.6, I think in 9.6. And then, OpenShift also has a Lightspeed component, but really it's infusing some of these AI type tools into the workflow of existing Red Hat products. And it's really meant to, like I say, simplify troubleshooting, make it easier for new users to get on board, and just to make your life easier with overall management of RHEL, right? And so within RHEL Lightspeed, what that comes down to, right, is on the command line, there's actually now a chatbot-like interface. But so rather than having to scour through man pages, having to search, you can ask this, and it can help you with how do I configure this thing, right? So not only can it point you towards here's how to go do that, provide you with the proper documentation, but there is also some features to help me troubleshoot a problem, right? So here's just an example of this service is failing to start. So it'll actually kind of explain to you, here's the steps to go about doing it. And then there's future versions in the future where there's actually going to be some intelligence into to help you actually surface problems and logs. And so we're continuing to add those features, but it's really how do we make it easier on the admin, use some of this capability to actually do something that's meaningful within the system. Yep, and I thought I had one more, but okay. Then we've got image mode. So like I said, image mode is really all around using container native tooling, right? So what image mode is it allows you to manage your RHEL installation like you manage containers. So a lot of folks are very familiar, especially in the development space and where you've got CI/CD pipelines and stuff like that to do your builds for containers. You can now use that same tooling to manage, maintain, and lifecycle your RHEL. Right, so you're actually building RHEL as a container image, but then you can lay that container image down onto a physical host, a VM. You have the ultimate flexibility to deploy it wherever you need, but you can lifecycle it in that more container and cloud native type functionality. So that gives you, again, pulling in the CI/CD practices, really streamlining operations, and really that comes down to, like we say here, it's rollbacks like your smartphone, right? So with image mode, you're doing a full image replacement. When you do an upgrade, you're not running a yum, RPM package install. So rollbacks are super easy, right? It deploys the images into onto the file system, and then when you boot into the new one, you just switch to a new container image and you boot off of that. So if you ever have a update that goes bad, and for anybody if you've installed, done updates and something breaks, trying to roll back a really long list of RPM transactions can be, kind of nasty. This allows you to just very quickly reboot into the old image and you're back up and running, and then you can troubleshoot and actually move on. And then there's obviously some security and enhancements as well, right? So this can be set up in a kind of a semi-mutable or immutable, and so that also helps with just containing, what's configured on the system and locking things down further. Right, and then within RHEL 10, we've also got the shift left type capabilities within Insights. So this is really all about pre-hardened images. We're doing stuff right within the RHEL chain for the SBOM, so that's software bill of materials. So that's really a thing now where more and more organizations are starting to go, okay, we need to make sure that the packages installed on this are actually the ones that came from Red Hat, and somebody hasn't replaced some package with some rogue version, right? And then it's also a matter of within Lightspeed and within Insights, there's actually life cycle and roadmap details built in now. So for instance, right here, right within Insights, we now have, and hopefully, yeah, that is readable. So you have now, you can see the versions of the different tools that are installed and what the life cycle is. So this hopefully makes it easier to track hey, we need to plan for these Ruby updates or Node.js or whatever it is. You can actually see some of that life cycle information right within Insights. So it makes it easier to track when we have to get ahead of, moving on to a new version of a various package, stuff like that. All right, the quantum computer, post-quantum cryptography. So really this is all around, there's new algorithms and new key modes and cryptographic standards that have been established for post-quantum. So that's really once quantum computing becomes a reality, the worry is that our current key algorithms could be cracked very, very quickly by quantum. So these new standards are meant as that's kind of the first step. I mean, obviously once quantum computers are here, things may change, but this is, a move in the industry to establish kind of a preparing for that and making sure that we've got strong enough keys and strong enough cryptographic signatures and stuff like that, so that as soon as that happens and they become mainstream, that you're not getting into that. So RHEL 10 is the very first Linux distribution that is post-quantum capable. And so that's kind of a big announcement. It's one of those of planning for the future more than anything, right? Not implementing anything there now other than having these kind of default out of the box, far more secure defaults than have been there in the past. And then new FIPS deployment as well, right? And then leveraging, like I said, RHEL 10 as your AI platform. So there's kind of new bits and stuff built right into RHEL. Some of the big stuff, right, are you've got drivers. The drivers for various accelerators are now baked in. We've also got a partner validation program for both the AI hardware and software. So really kind of trying to lay the groundwork for when folks start to actually, we want to run and do models locally, you want to have ultimately control over that. Well, a lot of those, the accelerators, working with drivers and Linux and all of that has historically been a little challenging. If anybody's ever tried to install GPU drivers on a Linux desktop, they kind of know that pain. This is meant to really ease that. And then building in the tooling for, serving and inference of AI. All right. And really, the other thing too, I guess, tying into that, right, is image mode. One of the big use cases in the ways that we're envisioning people are probably going to be likely using image mode is for some of those AI workloads. So it makes it really easy to have, here's the OS, here's our particular LLM with all of that stuff baked into that container, deployed on RHEL. New features and versions, right? So don't need to go through the list here, but we can see kind of the newest stuff out there. So new versions of these various packages. And there's a lot more, but these are kind of the big highlights. And then the other things, so Insights Advisor and Satellite, which Chris will be talking about in a little while. Satellite 617 is now out as well, if you haven't seen. So that supports RHEL 10 and has some capabilities within it for image mode management. The extensions repository, so this is kind of an extension almost to EPEL, so to speak. But really it's a new way of having some additional extensions to RHEL that can be versioned, and it goes through the same, SBOM kind of capability that the rest of RHEL does. So it's taking that one step further, providing those packages out there. And then, RHEL is now available in WSL, so it's now a validated platform to run WSL. So you can run RHEL on WSL. That's been capable in the past, but it's been a little tricky and not super documented. So that's now finally a thing there. But that's helpful as well for if you're forced to be on a Windows workstation, but you need to get some of your Linux tooling, being able to run that in WSL on your laptop, on your desktop, potentially useful. And then RISC-V support. We're now we partnered with Sci5, and we've basically got that out there in developer preview. So for folks, I don't know if anybody here is actually ever playing with any RISC-V or doing that within the organization, but we've got some customers out there, some customers and some partners starting to do that. So that's kind of one of the other big things. And then the last one that's a little bit interesting, the Linux Security Select add-on. So what this is if you have, right, if you follow Red Hat's support strategy for RHEL, we provide fixes and we backport fixes into versions. Like if you have ELS, say you've got right now RHEL 7 is an ELS, we will backport fixes that are important or critical. So it has to be above a certain CVE level or a CVSS score, and we will backport them. We've had a lot of customers that they're saying, hey, we've got CVEs that maybe aren't necessarily important or critical, but we still need them fixed. There is now an option to purchase a pack of, it's basically 10 CVEs. You can purchase that, and then you can come to Red Hat and say, hey, I want this fix backported into this version. You'll effectively get a hot fixed version of that package. And then once you have that delivered, whatever, it does eventually get upstreamed. So the other benefit here is even if you're not necessarily fixing that CVE, if some other customer out in the world says, hey, I need this one fixed, it will eventually get fixed. It'll get pulled back in and downstreamed into RHEL. Right, so certainly like regulated industries, some folks are, they're saying, hey, the important and critical isn't good enough. So this kind of helps bridge that gap for those folks. And then within Satellite 617, as I mentioned, so kind of some, just the pieces that are in there, right? So support for RHEL 10 obviously is kind of the big thing in 617, as well as with image mode going GA, tooling for image mode support, right? So, and then also tooling for managing Flatpak. So if you've been watching that, I think right now it's just Firefox and Thunderbird that on RHEL are packaged as a Flatpak, but Satellite now has the capability to maintain and manage your Flatpak content as well, so not just RPM. And then we've also got Secure Boot support built into it, IPv6, and then the Insights Advisor that we're touching on a little later. All right, moving on to Ansible announcements. So here's kind of the high level as far as what was announced. Policy enforcement, so if you've been watching it all, we've had and been talking about for a little while, policy as code. So that is now out there and available. And I think there's a slide specifically later that covers that. The lights, Ansible Lightspeed, so that's been out there for a while. We've now got some additional capabilities, right? There is actually a chat-like interface built into the interface of AAP itself, and that can help with, hey, how do I configure this, right? If I need to go, how do I configure organizations? How do I do whatever? It can actually, it's pointed at the documentation and can help you through that. So again, another attempt at let's try to make this as easy as possible to use, and especially for onboarding new users that maybe don't know how to navigate the UI or work their way around, right? Make it easier and faster just to kind of find what you need and get your work done. We've also got some new content collections. You're probably seeing a theme here, right? Some new content collections around AI, amongst others, right? There's also a lot of updated collections around cloud network virtualization. There's cloud marketplace offerings. So we have now a hosted offering for Ansible in both Azure and AWS. So if you say, hey, I want AAP, but I don't necessarily want to manage and maintain the system itself. I just want to run it as a software as a service kind of thing, right, as a managed offering. We have that available. And then various, RFEs and other feature enhancements. And then the automation dashboard, which I think is really cool. So it's in early adopter phase right now. It's out there, but yeah, we'll step through. So here's the Lightspeed Intelligent Assistant. So this is built into the interface of AAP directly. And it's really meant for, like I say, troubleshooting, helping to onboard people into it and kind of day-to-day. So rather than having to go look stuff up, go out to the actual documentation and try to figure out how to do this, the idea is that, this can be helpful and you don't have to necessarily be spending so much time trying to figure out how to go in and do, various things. And to help in troubleshooting and other stuff, right? So we're kind of figuring out where it makes sense to embed these things and make the platform easier and better to use on a day-to-day. Right now, right, so there's multiple ways to go about this. So it does use, you can deploy this now. So obviously there has to be an LLM on the back end, right, to do some of that capability. So you can deploy that now within Red Hat AI. You can deploy it on OpenShift AI. We do have third-party models coming to that as well. But you can see here kind of some examples of, the example prompts, right, the things you might ask it. And then it can help, explain that stuff or help you expose the documentation. So like I said, right now this is available as an OCP operator. So you can, if you have OpenShift, you can install it within there. You plug AAP into it and you're off to the races. And it's just a little chat bot, up in the top corner here, right? So you click that, it'll open up, and then you can go in there and do it. But obviously you have to activate it and have that LLM deployed behind the scenes. And then there are resources, so we'll share out you should be getting a list of these slides and stuff published out after the RHUG. So we'll have links there, but here's some additional docs, including you can go out and test drive this. So out in our interactive labs on the website. That's another plug too. If you guys haven't seen, right, if you go out on redhat.com, I think it's just redhat.com/labs. There's a whole bunch of interactive labs that let you play with various things. So it'll stand up an entire environment and give you like hands-on, actual real hands-on with various pieces of the product and kind of guided exercises. And so there's a couple out there for this if you want to try this and kind of see what it's like before going through all the work of deploying it in your environment. All right. Some of the other stuff, right, and tied to those AI collections, right? So we've been working on building out certified content for deploying and managing of the various bits of if you're trying to deploy LLMs and use some of the Red Hat AI technologies, including InstructLab, those collections are out there. So, and it's really how do we, if you're going to start deploying those, you want to deploy those in a consistent, controllable manner. And using Ansible is a great way to do that. And that's where really we've built those collections so you can grab those and just use that rather than having to reinvent the wheel. And then, as I mentioned, policy enforcement, right? So this is tied to various things, but I think one of the big ones too is as more and more places are looking to say, we're going to leverage AI for certain capabilities, we're going to say, we want some level of AI ops. You need to also be able to put guardrails in. And so that's really what the policy enforcement stuff comes down to, is setting compliance policies, setting guardrails so that you can say, hey, I want Ansible to be able to do some level of AI ops to automatically remediate certain things, but I still want to control what it is, right? I don't want it just expanding a disk until we run out of storage in the entire pool. Policy as code is kind of meant to do that. So that's where that comes in. And it basically, it works like this, right? So there's an automation launch. It goes through the policy collection. It evaluates it. And then if it passes, your automation runs. If it fails, then it'll stop it from running and basically gives you that control over that. So it gives the human, the decision maker, the ability to set that policy and control what you're doing, but still kind of get some of those AI capabilities and really build some trust and build some safety into that. And yeah, there's kind of the key use cases, right? So AI and AI ops, also security and compliance, right? So being able to set we don't want, maybe it's we don't want this particular key algorithm allowed, or we don't want this version of this package installable on systems. There's various ways that folks can use this. So if you go out to redhat.com/PAC, that's kind of the info page on policy as code. This is something fairly new, but it's really another way to go about, I want to automate certain configuration type things within Ansible. And then lastly, the automation dashboard. So this is a web-based utility that you deploy side by side with your AAP, and it talks to the API, and it's really meant to give you additional automation analytics. It is real time because it's talking to the API, and really it's meant for, so you can measure your efficiency gains, you can look at your ROI, right? So here's kind of an example of the dashboard itself that gives you visibility into what are the top things that are running, that sort of stuff. The other one that's really cool is this bottom dashboard as far as the ROI, right? Is it has all kinds of different options you can punch in. You can punch in your actual dollar amounts. So you say, hey, this particular thing happens and we run an automation, and every time that happens, it costs us X number of hours or X number of dollars, right? If it's something that when this event happens, we run up a $10,000 bill in AWS or something, right? If you can punch all of those in and you can control those numbers, and it'll spit out an actual number, a dashboard. It gives you reports you can export. So pretty cool tool. Right now it is deployed, as I mentioned, alongside of AAP, so it just runs in a container. And there's instructions out there. It's right now anyway, it's posted just on Google Drive. So if you can't get to Google Drive, you won't be able to get to it. That should be updating soon, and I've got a request out to the product team on that. But yeah, it's very, very new and kind of a cool thing. So that hopefully will eventually be getting rolled directly into AP, but as now it's just that kind of a standalone. And then some updates. So if you watched the keynotes, and if you haven't from Summit, those are out there on YouTube. There is also on a thing called Red Hat TV. We have all of the keynotes. So if you're curious, you can go watch those, page through them. But kind of one of the things that was announced, right, with HashiCorp getting rolled into IBM, and obviously we're also part of IBM, there's a lot of synergy happening between Terraform and Ansible. And so there's a lot of work going on behind the scenes on both sides to polish that and just add additional capabilities. So here's kind of some of the stuff now, right, as far as there's playbooks out there for automating that, and then additional collections, the infrastructure as code. Let's see here. And updating the AP inventory with resources from Terraform. And then we're working on the certified integration with Terraform Enterprise. So if you've seen what we have out there now, that was just certified with just Terraform. It wasn't certified with Terraform Enterprise, so that's coming. So if you're using both AAP and Terraform Enterprise, that'll actually be certified, tested, and supported. Likewise, from the Terraform side, additional stuff out there, right? So there's and I think I won't go too deep into this because I know Miles is covering a lot of it and may even have some additional updated information from myself. And then, I think the big thing too, right, is there's a Terraform provider that will be talking back to Ansible, right? So we're working on those connections in both directions, and it's really all about, they're both similar tools, but not necessarily, it isn't a direct competition. It's more of a better together, and it's really a right tool for the right job. So really it's let's enable them to talk to each other, to coordinate and kind of tie in, but not necessarily fight against each other. And so making that integration more seamless. And then lastly, there is as far as the interactive labs. So if you go out on our website, we've got the labs out there, but there is one specifically now for the current state of the AAP and Terraform kind of together. So if anybody's interested, go check out this lab. I think it's like a 30, 45 minute, but it's, pretty useful. It just kind of gives you an idea of how that works and what's out there now. And then I think there's obviously more to come as we continue to integrate. All right. AI announcements. Are we on time? So one of the big ones that we announced, Red Hat AI Inference Server. And so really this is all around, right? There's a lot of talk on if you're doing stuff with AI around training the models and building the models, but how you actually run them and consume them in production is the challenge, right? There's lots of people toying with using a model for something, but how do you actually run it at scale, and run it, without running up a huge bill? And so that's where Red Hat Inference Server comes in. It's another capability, but it's really all around running whichever models you want to run with the accelerators you want to run in any cloud, right? So our kind of goal there is one platform to run any model, any accelerator on any cloud. So whether that's local or whether it's in the cloud, and like I say, whichever models you have out there, it's really all around using that. And the technology under the covers in that is VLLM. So that's kind of the inference server that's out there, but that is now a supported, and it is a product that Red Hat will be selling. And then we've got validated, so there is an AI repository out there specifically for Red Hat AI, but here's kind of all of the different things that we validated, as well as building in LLM compression tools and stuff like that. So some of it is also trying to optimize and minimize the amount of resources that you have to use in order to run some of these LLMs. Additionally, we also announced the LLMD community. So really this is all around how do you take that inference capability and scale it at a massive scale and move it into. So it's really kind of it's combining the power of Kubernetes with the VLLM, right? So with inference server, but it's doing it at scale. So this is a new open source project, kind of created by Red Hat, but it's backed by a ton of industry leaders. So kind of all the big players out there in the accelerators, as well as in some of those models and whatnot. And there's the press release there you can check out for more information on that. And lastly, application platforms, so OpenShift, developer services, and these sorts of things. So we just announced Red Hat Advanced Developer Suite, and really what this is, there is not a new product here per se. It's really a bundling of various Red Hat services related to developers and development. So it combines Developer Hub as well as the Trusted Artifact Signer and the Trusted Profile Analyzer. So that's all really around, those pieces are around the supply chain, right? Trusted software supply chain. As more and more security stuff becomes important to organizations, they want to be able to say, hey, we want to know how this software was produced, where it came from, that it wasn't just downloaded from any old site off the internet and installed on our servers and opening us up to security issues. And then Developer Hub is our internal developer portal. So that's really how do you build a portal that developers can just go in and say, if I want to build a Node.js application, or I want to build something using Ansible, or there's all kinds of different golden paths and plugins to Developer Hub, which is based on Backstage, if you're familiar at all with that. But that's basically a supported and kind of we provide various certified golden paths and that sort of stuff within that tooling. So this is one big suite of those developer tools as a bundle. The one interesting piece there too is that I think most of these tools, if not all, the subscriptions were all based on a per seat license, right? Our per seat subscription. These will now be, you can subscribe them via CPU, so via cores. So it actually gets subscribed the same way that your OpenShift can be subscribed. So rather than having to pay per seat, you can just pay per capacity. So it makes the subscription a little easier if you're buying both OpenShift and some of these bits. Then OpenShift Lightspeed, so there's been advances. There was a few things announced, I think, last year at Summit, but additional capabilities and stuff within Lightspeed. But again, it's all around how do we use AI tooling and build it into the tool to make OpenShift easier to use, make it easier to troubleshoot, and just surface if there's problems or there's things that need attention. And it's really meant to both make your experts more productive, right? It's meant to make it easier to run the platform overall, help you troubleshoot, but it's also meant to help with onboarding of novices, bringing new people in, and kind of providing guidance and just overall making it easier to use, right? So Lightspeed, OpenShift Lightspeed comes with the following subscriptions. It supported on 4.15 and above. And then the LLM, so you can bring your own LLM, or you can obviously deploy it within Red Hat AI, within OpenShift AI. There's operators out there to deploy it. You could deploy it in Podman, however you want to. But it's basically plug in your own LLM provider under the covers. And just a little bit of an architectural as to how that exactly works, right? So the operator for Lightspeed, and then it'll plug in, so it basically will create a Postgres. You've got the actual web console interface, and then the backend service, which then talks to your model provider. So like I said, you can plug that into the various models that are out there, Watson AI, OpenAI, Azure, or you can plug it into one that's under your control. So this is a big one, I think, that I know at least a lot of my customers have. We want to start playing with some of these AI tooling, but we can't just go out there and let data potentially leak into the various big providers out there for regulatory or privacy or whatever concerns. So this gives you the ability to self-manage it if you want, or to just make it easy and buy it from the cloud. So ultimately flexibility in exactly where and how you're running those LLMs. And then lastly, Summit is coming up. So Summit 2026 will be here May 11th through the 14th, and that's going to be in Atlanta. So a little bit of a different venue this year. Last year we were in Denver. This year we were in Boston. If you follow Summit at all, we've historically done, for many years it was a flop between, it would go between Boston and San Francisco. So we'll be in Atlanta next year. And then let's see here. So just some additional slides here with Summit. I know I had, yeah. So, and then the other big thing is later this fall is Summit Connect is coming up, right? So October 2nd here in Minneapolis, we'll be having the Summit Connect. And really what that is it's a one-day miniature version of Summit, free event to attend, free event to attend. And yeah, basically we kind of try to distill down all the major announcements at Summit. Last year we did, and I think it was a pretty big hit. We did a lot of hands-on labs and stuff like that. So that's going to be the plan again, as far as I know, but it's really a chance to get a sampling of Summit, especially if you weren't able to make it out to Boston and join us. So lots of really good content at that, lots of really good information. But definitely, keep an eye out there, mark your calendars for that, and we hope to see you there. And then we have one other one. So coming up later this month on June 26th, we have a Red Hat AI Roadshow. So if you're interested at all in AI and kind of want to see what Red Hat is doing, we'll have some of the folks that are a lot smarter about AI than I am there to kind of talk about this. But this is a hands-on kind of be able to actually play with some of these tooling and see it firsthand and use it and try it out. So that QR code, if you scan that, will take you to the registration page. But yeah, we'd love to have you join us. And then I'll pull this up later today at the end of the day. But I've got a feedback survey out there. So this is just a Google form. You can fill it in anonymously, or if you want to, fill in contact info and have us get back to you. But just looking for feedback on this. So, if you like the barbecue versus the normal food we've got, if you've got suggestions on topics you want to hear about, if you've got a topic you maybe want to present on, we'd love to have customers present up here. I'd much rather have a customer presenting than having me talking to you guys. Like, let's get some real world use cases. So definitely scan that and give us feedback at the end of the day. And like I say, I'll pull this up and kind of share it on the screen at the end as well, so you can give us feedback. But yeah, greatly appreciated. And I want to know what you guys want to hear about and what's useful to you. So, and we'll go back to that for a minute. But yeah, we'll take a few minute break here, and I'll turn over to Miles, and then we can continue on. And then I think what we'll do is let Miles do his presentation, then we'll maybe take like a little bit longer break in the middle where we normally would have had the food break, and then we can wrap up the other two. Any questions or anything else that I missed or don't know if I can necessarily answer every question, but if anybody's got any, let me know. All right.
I got a question.
Yeah.
You talked about other people presenting. Would that be on June 26th, or is that just general?
Nope. So we do these RHUGs quarterly. So the next one probably is going to be like September, I think. We still have to get the date established. But for these RHUGs, we try to have 4 presentations. So if there's ever a topic where you say, hey, here's something we're doing that's really cool and we want to share it, we would love to have that. So it would be at one of these events. The one on the 26th, the roadshow, so that'll be a Red Hat led. It's the morning of that day, but it's basically a a little presentation on here's the tool and kind of show you it, and then a hands-on lab to actually work with it.